Hi everyone, welcome to part 3 of traditional versus digital mixing grays. Now again, remember this is no competition, this is just to give you an actual comparison of mixed colors traditionally alongside the digital identical colors mixed, or at least as close as we could get. Because remember, if you don't have a calibrated screen or if you're working in an environment that changes throughout the day, all of these things could have a pretty good factor on your end result of the colors you perceive as a specific color. Now, with the hex colors, we could zero in on an identical color that would always be that particular color, but how it is portrayed on your monitor, in your conditions, how it's reproduced, that all could be different. With all of that in mind, I just want to get you a close example of what mixing grays might be like compared to traditional. And the reason why is I think that the best advice I could give is don't be afraid of mixing, ending up with grays. We're going to go over a lot of grays from the traditional mixing only because that's what we get once we mix a lot of the colors. The grays will make up the majority of your midtones throughout the painting. If you want snappy grays, then the best thing to do in traditional is start off with snappy colors. But also, mixing grays, there all could be purple grays, greenish grays, silvery grays, reddish grays, many different types of a grayed color that will help you work in with what you're trying to do, especially if you establish a shadow, then you may want to stay along the same lines of the colors you've been using on the object that the shadow is going to be projected. You want it to be a part of that object, not a layer floating above that object. That is what a real nice, authentic shadow looks like. It's being projected onto a space with less light. Now, what I want to do first is go over a couple of books I have, and these I would strongly recommend. I'm just going to show you a couple of different pages that I would strongly suggest buying or purchasing these books on your own. I am not affiliated with them at all. I just strongly recommend things that work really well. One of them is the Blue and Green Don't Make Yellow. Very catchy title. And that is because in traditional, again, getting back to the secondary color, then that is important to know which colors you will end up with. Just because it's a cerulean blue, there are a couple different types of cerulean blues. You may not get the same green mixing with specific yellows. This book breaks it all down for you. There's another book here, The Perfect Color Choices for the Artist. That is also by the same gentleman, Michael Wilcox. And he also has two more books that I purchased a while back. Again, I've had these for at least 20 years or so. This one is just good colors that make up water. And this one is a good choice of colors mixed together that make up trees. Very nice, very interesting. He works on it at a scientific level, meaning that once the pigments mix, what do you get with various different combinations. Again, we'll go over just a couple of pages, but I just want to stress on getting grays digitally is not a bad thing. Let's go ahead and take a quick look at the books and we'll see what they say. Okay, let's start with my own book first. Power Composition for Photography, Develop Your Artistic Eye. This is Artistic Principles for the Photographer. Now, I have what I want to show you in this particular book, not photography, for art, is an entire chapter on color. Now, even though this is for photography book, the color will still apply to us, the freehand artist. A lot of things that are based on, how would you say, human nature, you want to read. This day and age, we have to read signs, the web, newspapers, articles, you name it. There's a ton to read. So when you see text in a painting or in a photo, you may want to read, or that viewer in general may want to read that text. So if it's not a part of your composition, then it may actually be detracting and take attention away from what you want the subject to be. In other words, just quickly, when I used to photograph weddings, if I photographed a bride and a groom coming into a room and there was an exit sign above it, I wanted to retouch that exit sign out. That would be an eye grabber, taking attention away from the bride and the groom. It's the same thing here, that Harbor Master is pretty tough to miss only because it's red and it's text. Moving on. Monochromatic. It's a mood setter. So as long as you have the same type of subject and atmosphere that goes along with that mood, then it is a blue jay sitting on a branch in a very monochromatic picture, nothing but blues and grays, but it's snowing, the bird is peaceful. That is a specific type of image in itself. Here is just more of monochromatics. Again, you're going to have to rely on shape. That would be the eye grabber. Now, intense color, it's still, again, going to be the same thing. It's going to be the shapes. The tentacles kind of keep you bouncing around, even though everything is pretty much oranges and reds. Quickly, this photograph, the golds of the grasses really have nice color unity with the actual stones and rocks and boulders in the photo. Now, photographically, this can only happen a very short time of a window frame throughout the year at the fall when the grass starts to die off and turns to a nice goldish yellow. That is when the grass will nicely match with the golds in the stone. Quick story, that is why I often photograph in black and white in fall. Now, somebody may think, why would you want to photograph black and white in fall? Well, when you have deciduous trees such as poplar, birch, beech, all turn a very vibrant yellow in fall, up against very dark greens of pines, makes a beautiful black and white. In the summertime, everything would just be greens. In the fall, in black and white, that scene changes dramatically. More color unity. The sweater is roughly the same color as the tree, and that is why I chose to put her there for her senior pictures. Warm and cools, again, a lot of grays. Here is direct sunlight. There's still a lot of grays in here. This one is just at the magic hour, within an hour after sunrise. This one is the same thing. There's a lot of grays in these photos, but what I want to show you is just this one is nothing more than split complementaries, whether it be a yellow-green and a purple, or could be violet, or a yellow-orange and a purple, which would also be split complementaries. Contrast is another thing, a same thing. You can't have intense colors without a neutral, deeper, darker color that is really setting off the more vibrant, lighter colors. Same thing here. Now, once you have a monochromatic look, then you're going to rely on shapes that are going to be the subject matter or contrast. This is a photographic trip. This is just to block the sun coming that's reflecting off of the leaf that give you more colors in your image. Here is the same thing without the grays and the gray blues of the boulder. You can't have intense red. Same thing down here. Red is an eye grabber, but there is a lot of grays that are subdued, that you have the lichen, which is a vibrant yellowish green, white yellowish green, and then you have a lot of that same values of grays that make up the shadowed areas. Now here's an interesting one, the same thing. I'd like to end with this one in my book, and that is the vibrant red up against the grays. But reds and whites are eye grabbers. This one was on a broken branch, this cardinal, and this white was grabbing my eye. So what I did was I took a piece of the branch, flopped it over, and put it down on top of this branch, and seamlessly stitched it in to eliminate that white, so now it just looks like a solid branch going across. But again, it's all grays with red. That produces even a stronger red. Even in subdued light, the red is still strong only because it's up against neutral grays. If I had a lot of other vibrant colors in there, the bird may be lost. Okay, Blue and Yellow Don't Make Green. Very catchy title. Michael Wilcox, second edition. Again, just quickly, I had these books for over 20 years. I pretty much bought them all at once as a set, and I never would regret that. Just to show you a couple of things in these books, and that is the exploring the range of grade violets. So in other words, you're mixing colors to specifically get a gray value, which is fine. One thing I gotta tell you, mixing steps like this in gradation is very difficult traditionally. I've sometimes gotten a darker color over here or more blue over here than over here. The reason why is digitally, we can control it, numeric values, and that's what we get. Very consistent. Traditionally, it's a little bit more practice and knowing how much water and how much paint you have on the brush compared to what you've just put down could be a very subtle difference, and that's what you're trying to do. So for the beginner, that is why I made my swatches the way I did. I could pretty much read any of the colors from one side to the other of what the two colors would give me together, but then I could pick out a variation anywhere from one side to the other. A little bit more easier than this. Also, especially, can you remember that if you want this shade, how much paint of each one and how much water will give you that exact shade? So for that reason, I just want an idea of what colors I will get mixing two colors together. To be real critical or technical, that would be even a greater challenge. The last one is just, again, before was grade violets. This one is grade greens. And just to show you just a couple of sections of this book, we are mixing colors to get a grade value. We want a grade value. So in other words, again, in most cases, don't be afraid of grade values of colors. These are the greenish grays you get mixing ultramarine blue, cadmium yellow light, and that is the color we are going for, especially if you need some subdued colors that would really produce a snappy yellow green, and so on. This is just some of the pages. The black line is just to portray the opacity of each color sample. It is a very good book. Let's show you the little ones real quick. This one, just for trees, just to flip through it quickly here. Some very interesting colors. And again, just to show you what colors he's talking about, 6C, 4-3A, those would be very tough to duplicate exactly if you're trying to duplicate values along this set of swatches here. And that's why I'm just looking for basic ideas of what I could get, because keep in mind, watercolors, they usually dry lighter than what you really get when you first put them down. And then oddly enough, opaque colors usually dry darker when you first put them down. When the water evaporates and all the pigment settles together, then you'll get a more intense, darker color, usually. Last one is just the water. I hope this is a very rare book, because the first page is printed upside down. But these here are just, again, some ideas of water and just mixing just a couple of colors. That's it. But again, if you want snappy colors, yellow, very transparent yellow on white paper is very different than digital. You're getting an optical mix from the colors, but what you're also getting is the light reflecting off the white of the paper through the color, and that is what's really going to produce an interesting effect, especially when you start glazing multiple colors. That cannot happen digitally. The screens emit one color, and that's it. There's some interesting just choices of colors, but some of the colors you could use we'll go over that make excellent mottled or just subdued colors for various pines, trees, any subject object you could think of. It's just a different way of mixing colors. Let's go into Rebelle and see what we have with our swatches. Okay, now that we have all of our swatches in Rebelle, I'll show you here shortly how I got them all in, because they're all in on each of one of their own layer. But what I want to show you first is just how many grays we're going to get out of our traditional swatches. This one right here is the French Ultramarine and the Burnt Umber. This is the one I wanted to bring back to my palette. If I start pulling colors out of it, they are going to be gray, and that's what I was looking for. There's my silvery gray that I kind of missed, but if I start going towards the umber side, then they're going to get warmer grays. I don't mind gray myself personally, but then if I start going to, let's say for example, here's the real good one here. This one is Prussian Blue and Burnt Sienna. If I start taking some out of that, they are going to be more of a greenish gray. Now, depending on what side I take them out of, again, it'll be warmer or cooler, but the grays may lean towards purple or may lean towards green. Now, also, if I take my colors from down here, then what I'm doing is actually using my Aquarelle. If I put it down, there's the Aquarelle. Here is the Windsor Lemon right next to it. You could even see that the Aquarelle is a little bit more grayish, almost a little bit muddy. So if you start with that color, you're going to end up with a little bit more of a muddy green if you mix it with most blues. Now, digital is definitely not the same as traditional. But however, if you usually, in a general rule of thumb, if you start off with snappy colors, you're going to end up with a snappy mix. If your colors are already muted down that you're mixing, then you can safely expect a muted color as the mixed color. Now, just some real quick background information. I used my Epson VR750 to scan them in, and I left all of the adjustments pretty much at what would be considered zero. In other words, no level adjustment, no contrast, no saturation, no anything. I just tried to get them in as exactly as they were in a digital form. Now, what I also did was separate them all out. All of these are all individual layers. So over here, just say for example, cobalt blue, these are all the cobalt blue layers. So if I turn one of them off, one of them will be missing. They're all on their own layers, and I want to keep this entire setup just for future demos in case I ever need traditional swatches for future demos, digitally speaking. Also, you may have noticed by now that the paper behind the traditional swatches is a little bit on the tannish side, which is actually the regular paper from Arches. That travel book and their watercolor blocks do not come in bright white. Now, the bright white is just about the same as pure white paper. Now, also what I had to do was, this is just a sample page of what I brought in, and that is this right down here. That is it right there, the whole entire layer. But what I did do is I could not just hit my white to alpha that is up here. Let me go to that layer first. And if I hit filter white to alpha right here, I hit that, and then it took out the kind of white. But what it did do is, if I turn on the yellow, it left all of the texture of the paper behind. So it's kind of transparent, but really not because of all the paper texture. Now keep in mind, I'm going to turn this off and then also take that back to what it was. Now it's solid paper again. We could verify that. It is back to opaque paper. Now what I want to show you was the fact that since I wanted to remove everything, what I did was I went to the blend mode, went down to hard light, clicked on that, and it turned everything white. So then I could go up to my magic wand and select the white paper. Right now it's on 15. That's not a bad adjustment. What I want to do is I'm looking for the exact number that will take out as much as I can in the background, but leave my swatches alone. I don't want it to start going into the swatches and removing that either. So right now where it's at, that's not too bad. So now that I got that area selected, I could just delete that out. Okay, now what I could do is actually go back to the normal and leave it there. But then if I turn on the yellow again, that is pretty clean. But however, turning on the red, my swatches are still 100% opaque. So now that I removed all of the paper texture, I could go back in and hit the filter, white to alpha, and then now it'll take that white behind the swatches out, and now my swatches are completely transparent the way I would want them. And then what I did was just select each swatch and then put it on its own layer. It took me a while, but I wanted these for any future setups. Okay, let's go in to the one we're going to actually work on. I have a little bit of a smaller setup. This is 20 by 30 at 300 DPI. So we're going to go to a little bit of a smaller one, and then we're going to check and see how many different options we have to mix our grays, also just colors in general, but then the pros and cons of each option. Let's do that next. Okay, this is the project we're going to be working with. I just have 3 sets. We'll work with a little bit of them. And I just took a copy-paste sample of this one right here, moved it over here. This is the Aquarelle and Cobalt Blue. Be a good one to start with. And I will move it up, and you can even see the grays now a little bit better, and even the traditional. So what I will do is cut back our opacity a little bit. But what I wanted to show you real quick, if I take a blue, just say for example, the Cobalt Blue, and it is set up here on transparent right here, that's transparent. But if I keep on making the same color over and over, and we're not going to have blue anymore, so we have to be aware of that also. It'll start to go black. Now, very seldom would you have to do that, but just keep in mind that you're not going to be able to keep adding the same color too many times if you want coverage in the transparent mode. Now this over here, we will start putting down our blue. Let's turn off the diffusion, and we'll just put all our colors down first. And then we will get our Aquarelle. Okay. I'll take a little wee bit of Aquarelle back over the Cobalt. That looks good there. Now we'll turn on the diffusion, leave it go. That mixed pretty good. We have some nice greens here. Now, if it's leaning towards the Aquarelle, we're going to get more greens on the yellow side, and it may go a little bit gray in between, but that's not too bad. That's already even getting some decent greens compared to what our traditionals are. So it depends on how vibrant you want your greens and your mixed colors to be, because we're going to be able to do this several different ways. Now, if I just leave it like that, that's one way. That's just straight mixing. But now if I start blending it a little bit more, what I want to do is leave it sit then after I blend it. And then there's our paper coming back, and it'll blend it even a little bit better, a little bit cleaner. The water will carry it here and there and make it a little bit of a smoother, more blend. But then that's not too bad there. That's one way of doing it. Just straight mixing, and that's it. Now, here's another way. If we take the cobalt blue and the Aquarelle, but we use the pigment, then if I take my Aquarelle, I'll turn the diffusion off again, put it down, and then the cobalt blue on top of it, and leave that blend out a little bit. Now we got a snappier green, but here's one thing we also have to be aware of too. If I put my burnt sienna down on that pigment layer, that would be this color right here, and I will put it down right here. That's my burnt sienna. So now if I go up to the next layer up and put down burnt sienna without the pigment on, this is my burnt sienna. Big difference. So here's my point. If you decide to mix this way, on this system with the pigment turned on, then I wouldn't be too concerned about naming your colors or what the color name is, because it's all going to be irrelevant. It's going to change. You could see that this blue is nothing like this blue. So it also changed your colors for you too. And what it did was it saturated all your colors but gave you a snappier green. That is good. That is, if you want it that way and you're not concerned about color names, then you could do it this way and that will work out good also. Now this way again doesn't even bother me that much, only because it's still even more, a little bit, in my opinion, a little bit more greener than this. This is still pretty strong gray for the traditional, which again, I don't mind grays. Now here's another way we could do this. And that is, we go up to the lemon yellow. Now if we take a cleaner color, we go up to cobalt blue again. We'll turn off the diffusion. We'll put our cobalt blue down. This is without pigment turned on. And then we will get our Windsor lemon this time, which is a more vibrant yellow. And now we'll turn on the diffusion. Now this one up here, from what I could see, is definitely more of a snappier green than this one down here. This one is a little bit more grayish, and what we will do is we will take our brush. I'm going to take it down just a little bit. We'll take a color from here, put it right here. Take a color from here and put it right there. This one is a little bit more greener. This one's more grayer. They mixed, but you can see them now. I have the diffusion speed up a little bit, so things are happening fast for us. And then I have the absorbency way down, just so things happen faster. But you can see it's even a little bit more greenish, and it's holding true that even with digital, if you use snappier colors, you'll get snappier blends. Okay, then another way we could do this is if we could even just stay on that same layer, and I will put down the, let's go with the cobalt blue. And then let's stay with the lemon this time. And then that would be easier for us to do, but then I'm going to blend it a little wee bit just to help out the mix once it starts mixing. And then now I'll leave it bleed together once I turn on the diffusion. And here we go. Okay, you can see it moving around, which is great. Okay, now we can apply a filter to this to get more of something like this. We apply a filter to this one. Now we could do this two different ways, but each one again has a pro and a con. And that is, I could put down a non-destructive, which is right here at a saturation. And then if I put down a saturation filter, if I add saturation to this, it's going to give me more of a snappier green. But the only problem with this particular filter is it works. You can see what it did to these down here. If I turn it off, everything changes back. So right now, this filter is non-destructive, but affects every layer that it is above. So if you can do this and working on just the very bottom layer, and then that is where you can apply that particular type of filter to it, then it will only affect that very bottom layer. If I take these two right here, move them all the way down to here, and then turn this on, now only this one is being affected. Anything that's on this layer. If that is on its layer, the same layer also, then it will be affected too. These right here are on this same layer, but if I turn this off, but now these over here, this down here, all this will not be affected because those layers are above the non-destructive filter. So that is one way we could do that. Now if I turn this one off, go back to this filter, I can also add a saturation filter up here with just a saturation, but then I could also use a range on this one, but once you apply it, it's applied. It is destructive. Now here's what we could do with this one. I'm working on this right here. Now if this is still on the same layer, that may change also, but I'll show you what we're going to do. First we're going to hit color range, and what I want to do is put this slider over to where I want it to start changing on one side, and then this is the peak that'll change. This right here will be on the other side of green because we only want to affect the greens. We want to try and keep our blue the way it was and well, in this case, the lemon the way it was. So now what I want to do is take the saturation all the way down to 0, and it's going to show me what it's going to change. So if it's going to be all the yellow, if I want the yellow to stay the way it is, then I'm going to slide this one right here on the inside more towards green. And now my yellow is starting to come back, and then this tapers off to make a nice gradation, so I can slide it in too, and I'll eliminate the yellow. Now my yellow's back, so now what is gray, since I turned the saturation the whole way down, I'm showing myself what will all change. That may be easier to see this way than a very subtle change of not having the saturation all the way down to 0. Negative 100 in this case. So now if I want to fine tune this, if I want a little bit more blue or less blue, I could slide this one back and forth, and you can see it right in here, what it's changing, depending on how I slide this. It'll either go gray or back to blue, and that's what's letting me know what will be changed. And then if I take it back up to 0, and then now I could start going above 0, and I'll start getting a snappier green. But it will only be the green area that I will be changing. My yellow and my blue will stay the way they are. This way I'm only changing my mixed areas that will give me the opportunity to get snappier mixes, but leave my original named colors the same. I can apply that, but then that's it. Once I apply it, it's applied. It's not reversible later on. Okay, and then now let's go into one more final way we could do this, And that is, I'll bring it up a little bit. Now what we could do is we'll add 2 layers. And what I'm going to do is add our yellow right now. And we'll even use the Aquarelle in because it's a little bit more of a challenge. And I will make it just like this. And then we'll put our blue, cobalt blue, on this side. And now I will go to the second. We're going to put that one with sap green, which is our snappy color already. And we're going to make an illusion. We'll let that blend out, fast dry it, and then now I could blend the green out into the yellow. Blend the green into the blue, which isn't too bad. And then go to the bottom layer and blend the yellow into paper. Same thing with the blue. And then that way we might get a snappy green that way also, because we're already putting the green down. And this way, if you're working on multiple layers, I could even go back in. This is my blue and yellow. Just how I blended in the white, I can also even just take my Kleenex brush, which is right here, very light brush, and I can even use it in eraser mode and just lift up. Oh, that's the yellow. I don't want to do that. What I would do is go up to 2 and start taking the green off to give it more bright yellow. And then if I want to take, if I turn off the green, then I can even go down to this layer and take out some of the blue, very lightly dust it. And this is skipping over the paper pretty good. This is my Kleenex brush. Now if I put that layer back, I got a snappy green there too. But now that's just one of many different ways we could do it. But again, it's going to depend on your situation, what you're doing, how you're doing it, and the pros and cons of every way that you can mix those colors together. This way it'll give you options, but however you'd want to do it, you can consider it. Now if this was opaque painting, then you could just take the pure green right back over the blue or the yellow and give it an optical mix, or just more or less an illusion that you're mixing them together. But that will also help itself out too. That I cannot wait till I get into acrylics with the traditional. Otherwise, this is the different ways we can mix grays in digital. And this will be the final demo in this series of 3. So I hope you've gotten something out of how to mix colors in digital compared to traditional. That again, pros and cons for everything we do. Just do the best you can, figure out what end result you want, and do whatever you need to do to get that end result. So, until I see you out in the field or back at the studio, thanks for watching.